What up, boy? Ryan Tillman, let him have it. Savage on the set. Oh no, it's the Bobo. Ryan Tillman, let him have it. Savage on the set. AJ, what up, boy? Ryan Tillman.
Yo, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the It's Needed podcast, where we discuss real issues involving law enforcement in the community. It's your boy Ryan Tillman, founder of Breaking Bears United, and I'm joined by light-skinned wonder himself, Mr. Oh No, it's the Popo. What's up, Brody?
Ryan almost forgot we was live there for a minute. He's about to be like, "Hey, let's
Hey.
just run it back, y'all. Run it back. Run it back."
Can we get some audience applause, Billy? Since Big Shot Billy's never in studio no more. He probably forgot how to do it.
It is different having Big Shot Billy here
Billy
live with us.
I know.
Yes, hello.
Welcome, Billy. Welcome, Billy is here.
If you were here at the very beginning, you might have just heard some of that cracker crunching.
This cracker?
Yeah, because it was loud. It was in my ear. We're sorry for everyone that's listening. Ryan's just hungry.
Bro, I'm hungry, bro. I'm not hungry, but I'm hungry.
Hungry. Yeah, and I've been eating. Listen, I've been on like a little diet too. So yeah, your boy is hungry too.
I'm like HON hungry, not HUN hungry. You know what I mean?
Hungry.
What's up with y'all fellas though? Thank you. Shout out to all you guys that are in here right now. Pretty substantial amount of people in here right now. So y'all probably like,
we're off to a terrible start, but thank you for coming.
Oh man. Anyways, what's going on with you, AJ?
I'm good, brother. I'm good. Life is well, man. It's raining right now. Weather's nice. Nothing to report, man. All is well.
Nothing to report.
Nothing to, same old, man. I will be in Chicago next week for an event. But other than that, man, I'm good. Slow motion.
Make sure you bring your extra strap with you.
Town. Never leave home without it. And I got two attached to me, so I don't.
Here we go. Now, are you driving to Chicago or flying?
I'm flying.
Okay. How far is that from Ohio?
I never flew to Chicago. I normally drive, and it's not that bad of a drive. I want to say it's like maybe 6. Don't get me lying. Let me look that up. You said that's a long drive? That's like from one part of college to the other part.
Eileen said, "Be careful in Chicago." See, Eileen knows.
Yeah. My wife's aunt is in town who lives there, and she said it's pretty bad. Like they never go to the downtown area anymore.
5 hours. I like Chicago. I love Chicago.
I've never been.
Chicago ain't that bad. When you go to like certain parts, like Southside Chicago
is beautiful. Like downtown Chicago is beautiful.
Chicago, mm-hmm. I prefer Chicago over New York. Sorry to all my New York people out there. I know.
Now, when I was gonna buy some property out there in the hood, that area right there is like kind of backed up. Anyway, what's up, Gene? Shout out to you from the UK. Sorry, we're off to a slow start, guys. We're all tired. We're not gonna lie. I'm hungry. But what I do want to do, I don't want to get sidetracked. I want to devote this episode to talking about the response to Uvalde, Texas. A lot of people are feeling some type of way about it. Like a lot of people are feeling some type of way about the law enforcement response or that or lack thereof. Some people were quick to jump on the criticism bandwagon with how they responded in so many different ways. So we didn't get a chance to talk about it because one, I was on the road, AJ was busy, Billy was busy. Then last week we had a guest on, but I felt today would be a really, really good time to talk about it. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna do something a little different today. I'm actually gonna pull up just a news headcast, or what's it called, a broadcast. Mm-hmm. A news broadcast that none of us have watched, but I'm sure it's kind of similar to everything. And we're going to actually let that stimulate the conversation today. And what we're also going to do is we're going to kind of talk about how we respond to active shooters, why we respond to them, and et cetera. So I thought this would be a good mix up. So if you guys are in your car, listen to this, make sure you guys go watch the online version. But for all you guys that are here with us on the online, just make sure you guys just stay with us for a second. I'm going to go ahead and switch my screen right now. And you guys will kind of go ahead and see what I'm talking about. So that being said, as soon as I figure out how to do this,
you're good.
There we go.
Just get off that screen.
All right, there we go. Let's watch this.
In Uvalde, Texas was a failure, but it was apparently an even bigger mess than we knew. A new bombshell investigation from the New York Times reports the incident commander in charge, the school district police chief, Pete Arredondo, showed up without his police radio to communicate. The Times cites a law enforcement official familiar with the investigation. The newspaper reports Arredondo decided in the first minutes to fall back after the gunman's bullets grazed a couple of police supervisors. He reportedly called a police landline from his cell phone to request more backup and said the gunman was contained. Of course, we now all know that the children were trapped inside that classroom with the gunman, cowering in fear, some playing dead, others calling 911, begging for help. So instead of confronting the gunman immediately, like they had been trained since Columbine, police officers held back for more than an hour. As we reported, Border Patrol agents eventually ignored that police chief's orders and led a stack of officers in the classroom to kill the gunman. The Times reports they were done waiting for permission. They continued even after one of them heard a command crackling in his earpiece, "Do not breach." It's not just the police chief under fire either. The father of one of the murdered students is now going after the maker of the AR-15 style.
All right. So before we get into gun control stuff, I want to go ahead and talk about, kind of what we've been seeing. Obviously, this is a little different. Oh, my bad, Billy. Me and Billy fighting with the view. So that right there is just, I didn't specifically choose CNBC for a reason. I just went on YouTube and just selected, some type of broadcast because a lot of them are saying the same thing. So I felt like it'll be a good conversation starter for all of us. I know a lot of people listen to, what we have to say on this podcast for our opinion. So let's just dive into it. What I want to do is I want to talk about some of the reports that I did read. And actually, they even said it in there is the initial response. Some people, when they say that the police believe that he was contained, I had read some reports that said that the reason they didn't want the law enforcement officers going in there right away is because they thought that this was a what do you call it? I'm drawing a blank right now, but essentially where this was going to turn into a hostage situation.
Like a
barricade. There it is. They thought this was a barricade situation. The difference between a barricade and an active shooter, I guess you can say, is an active shooter or an active killer, you might say, is when a person is going out there actively harming people, causing great bodily injury and or death to people, and just going all the way all over the place. A barricade is when somebody they could have committed a murder or whatever it may be, but they go into a place, they hunker down, and then they wait there, and then it could turn into a hostage situation.
Yeah.
The reason why police departments may wait instead of breaching doors in that situation, because if they have the opportunity to preserve lives through negotiation, then they're going to call in their SWAT team, their crisis negotiation team, and try to negotiate with them out of there. A very similar situation to make an example of this was in Dallas, Texas, when they had that active shooter downtown, when those police officers were killed. It was a standoff for hours because this guy was barricaded at the back of a parking garage. And so it wasn't until hours later that they actually ended up blowing this guy up because he was still trying to cause some type of great bodily injury to people. But it wasn't until after hours. And so that's why there was a standoff. So it's almost my assumption again, and that's why the after action report is so important. But it almost is my understanding that the initial thought was this was a situation that turned into a barricade incident. And then now that whoever is calling the shots is saying we're going to treat it as a barricade and do a surrounding call out. And a surrounding call out is basically you surround the place and you're going to start trying to call that person out, start trying to negotiate. And I'm on our negotiations team. And as a negotiator, that's the whole strategy. You surround the whole place and you get on those phones and start calling people out. Now, again, this situation just happened, 2 weeks ago? And so, there's still so much information that yet has not come out, but a lot of people were quick to criticize the response. So what's your initial take, AJ, Billy? And then we'll kind of break it down a little bit more. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my initial thought of this whole thing was I was confused. I had my initial questions like, well, what was really going on? But the issue is, and I think somebody said it in the comments, is the news has done such like a horrible job at like reporting things. I didn't know what was true and what wasn't. When things were getting reported, I was like, there's no way that's true. How do we know this is true? And especially being a victim of it myself. So, I'm more so wanted to wait until the facts got out. But I do know that if there's an active shooter, you're trained to go in and to preserve life.
Correct.
And I want to say it was like 3 or 4 years ago, me and my partner were driving around and we got a call as an active shooter. We got an active shooter call. It came in as that at a library, and we were like 2 blocks away, which never happens. So there was someone actively shooting people in the library. And I always carry a shotgun with me. So we fly down there, we grab the shotgun, I rack one in it, my partner gets out, and we immediately go in. And it's chaos. People are running down the stairs, falling down the stairs, running towards us, like pointing up the stairs, like he's up there, he's up there. And we're running up the stairs, and we're trying to look at everybody's hands while they're running by us. And we come around the corner, and sure enough, a guy has a gun in his hands. And we beat on him, meaning we put the shotgun pointed right at him. And before we can even yell commands, he drops the gun and lays down. And what it was is they actually like kind of walked by each other and bumped shoulders, got into an argument. One guy pulls the gun out and shoots him, and then it came in as active shooter because everybody was running. It was echoing through. It's a huge library. So people were like, it was echoing throughout there, and people thought that they were like firing multiple shots. But that's just an example. Like we didn't really like hesitate. We're like, okay, there's somebody in here shooting. Like we need to go in here and preserve life, which it sounds like that initially happened, right? Because officers were shot, correct?
So what initially his grandmother was killed. That was the first thing that set everything off. And it sounds like there was some type of chase, and then after the chase. But then again, there's a lot of misinformation. It sounds like there was a chase, and then there wasn't a chase, and the car crashed into the building, which is where he ultimately he enters onto the campus. And so there's a lot of kind of going back to your guys' point, and even my buddy Ike was saying is that you hit on something really, really good, which was the media really can't be trusted like they used to. And that's what's so unfortunate. I think so people are so caught up in trying to get information or misinformation out there or clickbait that they negate any real, realities of what is actually occurring. There's a reason why these investigations take so much time, is because there's so many people that have to be interviewed. And so because there's so many people that have to be interviewed, how are we really supposed to know, why they did what they did or why they didn't do what they did? So only thing I can fall back on when I saw all of this stuff, what I fall back on is, what are we trained to do? And like AJ said, yes, in an active shooter situation, we are trained. They used to, so back in, just to give context, a lot of people know this now, but when Columbine happened, that's what actually occurred, which the department showed up. They did this whole surround thing while people were getting killed. And after Columbine happened, which was in the late 90s, I want to say, early 2000s, it changed the way we responded as police officers to active shooter situations. And by changing that situation, when they said, hey, look, first two people on scene, you're going in there, your primary goal at that moment in time is to go stop that shooter or go stop that threat. You're not waiting for everybody like you used to. That's how we train. That's how my department is trained. And so those are some critical things for people to understand when they're understanding what an active shooter is or what the response should look like.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things I do want to say, and this is equally important, is that a few things that people miss out is that Uvalde, Texas, from a geographical standpoint, was located in the middle of nowhere. It was, and the reason that's so important is because when you have a department in the middle of nowhere, and this was a school district police department, which is a little different because they don't always have the same tools and resources that your regular city organization might have, that also plays a factor. Some other things to consider is, I think the department was only 8 or 9 officers. I could be wrong, but I think that also plays into effect. So when they're talking about waiting for certain equipment, I can see that being a logically reasonable explanation as to why they may not have done certain things. But here's the biggest kicker. The biggest kicker is this: is that people, yes, as police officers, we all signed up to run towards the bullets, and I have no problem doing it. As a matter of fact, there was a time where I responded to what was believed to be an active shooter, and as soon as I got there on scene with my sergeant, it was at a TJ Maxx store. As soon as we got there, I was like, "Hey, you ready?" I looked at him. He looked at me. I said, "Yep, I'm ready to have my head on. Have my helmet on, have my rifle on," and we were off. We weren't waiting for nobody. So yes, we signed up to run towards the bullets. However, what I want you guys to understand and realize is that just because we signed up to run towards the bullets, we also have to be smart on how we run towards those bullets. Like, I'm not going to just run towards a place where I know a guy is firing at me, because what point or what good does it serve me to get to a doorway that he's firing at and I get there and get shot or killed? What good am I now? I can't help your children out. 2, now I'm extra added weight that now the responding officers have to worry about when they're coming in there.
And not only that, now you gave him a bulletproof vest and ammunition and another gun.
Now we gave him all sorts
of radio.
Exactly. So just because we signed up to run towards the bullets doesn't mean that we don't think about how we run towards those bullets. And so I think a lot of people are getting that part confused.
Yeah.
So again, this is not me making an excuse for the response, because again, I absolutely have no idea, what's going to come out at the end of this.
Yeah.
I 100% believe that there are going to be areas of improvement for their response. No doubt about it. There's always area of improvement. So I'm not going to sit here and say that they are perfect, because I know they weren't perfect. But what I am saying is that let's wait to see what happens. I do understand though certain, situations. And that kind of brings me back to my other point was there was a belief that they were waiting on certain shields and equipment to get there before they made entry. Why is that important? Is because again, you want to be smart and tactical. And so if you have some level of cover to make it to get as close as you can get to stop this threat, then I can see why they may have waited. Now, it doesn't make it right. I'm not saying that their tactics were right. I'm just giving you the thought process and the philosophy behind it. And then also when you have Border Patrol agents that are going in, again, they answer to somebody that's different. There's two separate agencies and things like that. So go ahead, AJ.
Yeah. And even if that is the case, like even if you're somewhere and you have like a supervisor telling you, stand down, like at the end of the day, you have to live with your actions. So like if like in your heart of heart, I can't stand down in a situation anymore. Like I have to go in here and like try to do something, and you have people that are willing to go with you. That's on you. Like, what's going on. Like you hear things, you see things. So if what we just watched is true, good for those Border Patrol agents who said we're going to go in here and do what we have to do. But since we're talking about this, and you had already mentioned, you're sure that something will come from this as far as like training or changing the way that we do. I couldn't help but think, how can we prevent it? Like I understand like training, all about it. We've talked about it before. I'm all about improving our response to things. And I think that's what, makes us so valuable, is we're constantly learning and figuring out like how we could do things better and how can we respond more appropriately. But my mind goes to like, what's the absolute solution? Like, how can we really nip this in the butt and like stop this from happening? And I thought like, what do you think the most secure school is? It's not a trick question. Like, just think for a second. Like, we're talking high school, middle school. Like, what do you think, or where do you think like the most secure school is?
I would say elementaries.
But like more specific. Like, is there like a specific school you could think of that's just like super secure?
Juvenile Attention Center for Kids.
Yeah. So my mind went to, okay, whose children go to that school? So I guarantee you that there are schools in this country where very important, I'll put important in air quotes, where their children go to school, and they're probably more secure than banks. They're probably more secure than some of the most secure buildings in the United States, because these important people's children go to that school, right? And when I say secure, I mean there are security measures as far as officers, security guards, cameras, doors are locked. Like there's a good security protocol, and I'd be willing to bet that an active shooter will probably never happen at those schools. So why?
But then,
go ahead.
But just to play devil's advocate, the reason it wouldn't happen at that school is because that's not a soft target. I mean, it's not a soft target. Those would be hard targets, because the person that's going to shoot those places up probably has the mindset to know like this place is more guarded. But yeah, that's probably going back to your point though.
It's exactly going back to my point. So, where I work, I got to be careful. I say where I work, they removed police officers from the schools, and I'm good friends with teachers and administrators in districts throughout really the country who have had the same thing happen. More here to be specific, and they hate it. They're like, the school's so unsafe. We have fights that happen in our classroom. We can't do anything about it. They smoke weed in the hallways, and it's like, when you remove that threat, because believe it or not, like we being police officers are a threat to anyone who may come in and attempt to harm students or staff or anyone else in this building. That's our intent to be there. We're a deterrent. We're a security measure, right? Like, we are going to be the ones throwing bullets back at you while you're throwing bullets at us or other people. But when you remove that element, you create what? A soft target. So for me, I'm like, look, we don't need one police officer at every school. We need multiple police officers at school. Like, we need to make sure that these buildings and facilities are super secure. Like that's what we need to be focusing on. Like I love focusing on like our response to things, because no matter what, like there's going to be a situation. Somebody could go to a mall, someone could go to an old folks home. Like I get that, but like I'm a big picture guy. So okay, once we do the training and then an active shooter happens, we're still going to lose lives, because what if they go into a classroom full of kids? What if they, like we need measures to where we have somebody there 24/7, or at least during their hours of operation.
But what's interesting is like I literally just saw an article, and I didn't watch the video yet, but it was some kids that were protesting having having more officers on campus in response to this. Like that's not what they wanted. And again, I think the media fuels this fire because it's comes off the heels of the whole George Floyd thing when they were talking about defund and this and that. But on the other side of that, I think it's also we are partly to blame as police officers in why certain people view things like this, because for the longest we have done ourselves a disservice as being the police officers on campus, because a lot of those officers that have been school resource officers were put in that position because they were just trying to get away from patrol, they were on timeout or whatever it may have been. And so one of the biggest things I hear when I travel to schools and I talk and I ask the administrators how they feel about their relationship with the SROs is like, we have no relationship with them. Like they go do their thing and they're gone. And so because of that, it has left a bad taste in the people's mouth that are on the campus. And so they go to another extreme and they just say, well, just get rid of the police officers. And so we have to, as police officers, have to be willing to step up and say, you know what, if I am a school resource officer, I'm gonna make this my pride and joy, and I'm going to treat those kids like they are my own kids. Like that was the mentality I had. But when you have that mentality, like, oh, it's just a job, I show up, I do my thing, clock in, clock out, don't really have no relationships with nobody, then that's what we start doing to sell ourselves a disservice, because the people that are like, they see that, the administrators, the kids, they see that, they're like, man, I don't want no officer on my campus. And then, but to your point, well, what's the alternative? If it was a perfect world, I think we should have multiple officers on the campus. I think my kids, I don't know if you guys saw him, one of my sons is in the studio today, he's in the background, but that's our pride and joy. Like that's the most valuable thing to me in this life. Other than my relationship with Christ and my wife, that's the most valuable thing to me in this life. So I want to protect that at all costs. And if it means having to put more officers on campus, I would be all about it. But sadly, there's so many people that are driven by their emotions that they're allowing their emotions to dictate what the action should be. And they're like, oh no, I don't want no police officers on my campus because I don't like cops, which is a completely wrong response.
So let me tell you what Ohio's reaction to this shooting is. I'll just read from an article that was posted 3 days ago. Ohio is set to enact a law that allows teachers and other staff to be armed with guns in schools once they have completed up to 24 hours of initial training.
Wait, read that one more time.
Ohio is set to enact a law that allows teachers and other staff to be armed with guns in schools once they have completed up to 24 hours of initial training.
How do you feel about that?
So our governor has already said that he's going to sign it. And
that's surprising to me.
That's
very surprising.
It's very surprising to me as well.
I'll tell you now, you'll never see nothing like that in California.
No.
Yeah. And I mean, it made national news. I think he tweeted, that he's looking forward to signing the bill. So I have a relative who is a teacher, and a teacher in a school district that some say is problematic. And I was talking with this teacher, and I have to be very vague when I share these stories. So I was talking with this teacher, and what they say, and keep in mind, this teacher has like relationships with like their students, like you wouldn't believe, like just does a great job communicating with them, like really goes above and beyond. And when I was talking to this person, what they said is something that I didn't think about. I think from like a cop lens most of the time. And what they said was, I'm not sure that if one of my students came in and started shooting other students, that I would have it in me to pull my gun out and take that student's life, because I see that person in a different light. Like I don't see that person as a killer. Like eventually I might, right? But I might hesitate, or I might not be able to do. Like, I'm not sure. It would almost be like a family member coming in and doing that. Like, I would almost want to put the gun down and talk to him or grab him and approach him and put myself in harm's way. And now guess what? You know, we talked about it before. Like, now this shooter, this active killer, has another firearm because they just killed somebody that had a firearm.
Yeah.
On top of that, my initial thought was, how do we tell the difference as responding officers? I told you the story about the library and how chaotic it was. And there's no way for me to really convey how chaotic it was and to describe the feeling that I had trying to watch 50 people who are running at you all at once, all of their hands and all of their movements, while listening to what they're saying and also scanning the other floors and scanning the other room and trying to look for like someone behind me. Is he like, I mean, it was a very chaotic scene. So I can't imagine responding to an active shooter situation and you see someone that's not a police officer come around the corner with a gun in their hand who has 24 hours of training and they're pointing it, trying to do the right thing. What do you think the outcome of that's going to be? Or what do you think the outcome is going to be when that teacher, you have police officers who are highly trained in firearms and still shoot at targets and miss and hit other people? What do you think is going to happen if a teacher has a gun and pulls out a gun and starts squeezing off rounds in that situation? What do you think the likelihood of them missing and hitting someone is? So there's three concerns that I have with that. And those are my three concerns. And I'm yet to have a conversation with somebody that brings something to the table that kind of makes me reconsider those concerns.
So here's my take on it. Is like, it's almost like walking past the house and you see that house that has the sign up that says beware of dog, and then you get to the backyard and there's like a poodle back there. And what I mean is, I think the teachers actually having the guns actually acts more as a deterrent, because it now would classify you as a harder target, because that person that's going to go and try to shoot up the school is worried that they might be faced with somebody else that has firearms as well. But beyond that, if that person successfully and still goes through with it and goes to choose that school, I don't think that they would be equipped to stop him as well as we would like to presume they would. And so I always, again, I said this to somebody recently, is I think that in society, we forgot how to think with a balanced approach. Like we're on one extreme or the other extreme. No guns, all guns. And I think that I think there's a way to meet in the middle on this. AJ, you bring up some completely valid points, no doubt about it. But I think that the balanced approach to me would be if a teacher, one, allow a teacher to carry a gun only if they're willing to carry the gun. Meaning like, hey, you may have a teacher that says, hey, I'm all about it. Like, I'll carry the gun, no doubt about it. Like, I'll do this.
I mean, I'm sure that's what it'll be.
Yeah, and I'm sure it is. But if they want to do that, then there needs to be more than 24 hours of qualification or 24 hours of training. Like,
it need to be an ongoing.
Yeah,
thing.
ongoing. Like, as police officers, we are trained. I still don't even think we have enough training in certain areas of things that we're supposed to do. So if we're requiring teachers to do this on top of their busy schedule, I'd be interested to see how that works out, because I do know teachers are always got something going on. But if we do want to make this a reality, then there should be a level of qualifications or ongoing training that they should be having, that should be mandatory for them. But things to consider along that note, kind of going back to AJ's point, is whether or not this is a good idea or not, is you have to realize that people are emotional anyways. And so I would say that teachers probably have a little bit more emotions, because as police officers, we have to remove some of our emotions anytime we're dealing with situations, because we have a job to do.
Yeah.
Can a teacher do the same thing? Going back to AJ's point, like if they see that student, are they able to separate the two and say, hey, look, it's fight or flight mode and I'm going into fight mode, or are they going to go into flight mode? Which brings me to my third point, is every human experiences fight or flight. I don't care who it is. I don't care if you're a Green Beret. I don't care if you're a Navy SEAL. Every human being will experience a level of fight or flight. The only difference between the Navy SEAL and the person that's a teacher is the Navy SEAL probably knows how to snap out of it a lot faster than the person that's a teacher. And so if a teacher is not trained to do certain things like that, that's going to be a problem, because I don't care if you have that gun. I don't care if you have a gun on your hip. If you don't know what to do when that moment arises, it's really all for nothing. And so, I share a story, and I've shared this on the podcast before, but I'll never forget a time where I was at my house at 10 o'clock at night, and I walked downstairs and the slider glass door opened up. And as
Yeah.
I'm walking, it says slider glass door open. For a few seconds, I froze. I was like, what the heck is going on? It happens to us all. And it took me a second where I had to snap out of it and say, okay, do what you do. This is what you do to get back to going, to handle the situation. So my point is that are we expecting teachers to do that now? Are we expecting teachers to be police officers?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a reasonable expectation.
It's just, I mean, it's frustrating, and I don't even know if this is like an appropriate response, but I'm just kind of like spitballing, right now, and telling you the thoughts as they're coming in my head. But I've said it before, and we've talked about on the podcast. Like, there are two things that like run this world, in my opinion. The first of which is money, and the second of which is power / politics, because they go hand in hand. And when we think about that, that's what we really value as a country. Like, that's what we really value. And the reason I say that is, aside from the obvious, but since we're talking about this and in this context, banks are extremely secure. I'd say probably one of the most secure buildings in our country, right? Like, there's no such thing as an unsecured bank. You're not just going to walk into a bank and there's just cash sitting around that you could grab, and you're like, hey, I'm taking 10,000, by the way, you can withdraw it from my account, right? Like, there's safes, there's security guards, there's officers, there's bulletproof glass. There's a lot of security measures that go into banks, because that's what we value. And when we talk about politicians, when you reach a certain level of being a politician, you are very protected, because that's what we value. And I'm not saying that we don't value our children, but at times it's frustrating to have these conversations, because these are the ideas we have for solutions. Like, well, we're just going to give teachers guns, instead of having like a real conversation. Like, okay, let's have police officers back in these schools, or let's make the buildings more secure. Like, I know of school buildings that are super not secure, unsecure. Doors don't lock, windows don't shut. They're old, dated buildings. Like, people could come in and out. There's no security presence whatsoever. Like, to me, like, that should be our focus. And please don't take this as, well, he's not trying to take ownership for the profession. Like I said, that we already are, right? Like, I'm not shying away from learning from this. I'm not shying away and increasing how we can respond to this. But what I'm also saying is, if we really truly care about this topic, which are the children that we are losing during these active shooters in these schools, then that is what I'm going to focus on, because I feel like that is what's going to preserve the most amount of life. Instead of training a police department, hey, next time there's an active shooter, you got to go right in and you got to start exchanging with them, and you just keep pumping officers in there until you neutralize that target. That might be on runs for service, that might be low staff, that might be dealing with other things that are going to affect the response to that school. I would much rather go, we're going to put officers in those schools, so that way when this happens, they could run down the hallway instead of having to drive from the other side of town to get here, get out of their cruiser, determine where the shooter's at. Yeah. Like, that is my thought process when we have these conversations. And I feel like we're just missing the opportunity to really sit down collectively and have that conversation.
But that's because we're too busy being distracted by the politicization of everything.
What happened immediately too? Like, I still don't feel like I fully understand, because even the broadcast that you showed, it said that a few officers were grazed or something. So he said, come back. So if that did happen, to me, the kind of excuse of, well, maybe this is a barricade, that's not true. He was still actively shooting, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I feel like there's a lot of unknown factors for the whole thing.
There's so much unknown factors, but it kind of goes. I just posted a video the other day where there was a female that was shot and killed by police, and the initial video that went viral was, oh my goodness, the police killed her. She's pregnant. She's handcuffed, and this and that, right? And so you just wait that, and the department puts out body cam. And they also put out a picture, and this chick has a freaking gun in her hand, and she's pointing at officers. But all these influencers were so quick to put this out there, pump it out there to fit their narrative, that it already led so many people astray, and it fuels this narrative. So I bring that up because people are so driven by clicks. People are so driven by likes and views, and I'm gonna put this out there right away, as opposed to waiting on facts. That's really what the problem is. That's what's going to hinder us from moving forward. I'll give another example. A few years ago, when I was a school resource officer, there was a lot of controversy about SROs having a rifle on campus. A lot of controversy for many reasons. A lot of it was the perception of it. Well, what's the perception of a police officer having a rifle on campus? Well, freaking A, like situations like that. I'm obviously licensed to carry one. I train with it, and a long rifle is definitely better if you're dealing with an active shooter situation like this.
Yeah.
But the perception of it, oh, well, I don't know, the parents are going to think this, or the kids, what is this, a military base? And so it's like, well, which one do you want? Do you want kids that are going to be potentially protected by this SRO, or are we worried about the perception that this SRO is bringing a rifle on the campus every single day? Then you have the other side of it. Well, what if we keep it in his office? And so my point is that we politicize everything, as opposed to really thinking. I think I made a post a few weeks ago when this first happened. I said, when are we going to stop politicizing everything and actually just get back to really caring about people? But we don't care about people. If we honestly, and I'm not saying us or a lot of people that are watching this, I'm talking about these politicians, these social media influencers that are just trying to get likes and views. Those people don't care about you. They really don't. The people that put up that video about that lady, that pregnant lady that got shot, I don't even think she was pregnant. Now that I found out, I've been hearing some information that she wasn't even pregnant. But that was the information that went viral, and they were so quick to fuel this narrative that all these people got all riled up and say, oh, this and that, and the police and all this other stuff. And it's like, well, that's my point. We will never be able to get to real solutions as long as we keep allowing people like that to dictate the narrative.
Yeah.
So are you guys trained? Sorry, Jay, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, like, before this happened, are you guys trained specifically on active shooters at schools? Is that
so
talked about?
So I'll give you, like, my department, we've done multiple, and it's actually fun training from the standpoint of it's very, very stress. It's stress induced. So they what we call stress inoculation.
Learn a lot.
So we put on uniforms. We do it with just like we did that video with simunition rounds, but they actually make rifles that have simunition rounds, and they hurt when you get hit. We actually hired role players. So they had, private citizens come in. They actually put makeup on them like they were bleeding. Some role players were supposed to play dead. Some were supposed to act like they're still alive. Bro, it was like a huge production. And we did it across collaboration with the fire department and multiple agency response. So I would say my department did a phenomenal job educating us on active shooter response. The thing is that not every department is like that. I mean, you think Uvalde, Texas, it's a department. Even that gets me fired up too, because even that department is like 7 or 8 people strong. So somebody put out some false information and was like, oh man, like their budget is $6 million. They were like, so that equates to $100,000 per, or $600,000 an officer or some crap. Like it was nonsense, right? And I'm like, okay, so you're assuming that whole $6 million budget goes right into their pockets. That's not including cars, maintenance, gas, training, equipment, all this other stuff. And so that budget gets cut down really, really quick. So people, they don't think when they're making these false allegations. And so I bring that up because even though I've got good training, even though AJ's probably got good training, not every single department has that access to the quality training like we do. That's where we need to get to. So when we talk about police reform, we should be at a place where every single police department across the country can get the exact or similar training. But because we're doing all this defunding, because we're taking money out of departments, because we're shifting the money or reallocating the money, departments can't do that. So it's like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's almost like, okay, on one end, y'all want to take my whole damn budget away, but on the other end, it's like, oh, well, y'all need to get there faster, and y'all should have the equipment to breach the doors. And it's like, well, I didn't have that equipment because y'all took that out of our training budget or equipment budget.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now,
man.
Well, then what is the protocol then? Because I mean, to be honest, my opinion is I don't know what the heck happened, and but it's, if they're like the waiting for shields or waiting for whatever, if I feel like if your kid was in a school, you're there outside, are you waiting for shields? Are you waiting for one more person? Like, what are you going to do?
Protocols 2 and go. Like you get 2, and it don't even have to. I mean, you don't really want to go 1, because 1 is like, you don't, at least if me and AJ went, we can kind of cover each other, look and stuff like that. And that's what people have to realize is like, even though the response is to and go, you still got to be tactical about it. It's like, I think we watch so many movies,
right,
and we see so many television shows that, I mean, you thinking about Jack Bauer, you thinking about or Will Smith from Bad Boys. Like, we got this mindset like, oh, you hear shooting, we just gonna go run Rambo style and go in there. Like, it can't be like that. You still got to be tactical, because it's like, I'll give you another example and I'll shift gears. When we are responding to an officer down, officer in distress, or a traffic collision, officers have a tendency to want to drive crazy. And so we start blowing lights, we start driving all crazy and stuff like that. But a good training officer will tell you that even though an officer is in distress, or you're going through a bad traffic collision, what good are you going to be if you don't even arrive on scene because you got in an accident? So it's almost the same philosophy when talking about an active shooter. Is like, even though you should go, even though you need to go, you don't neglect your safety. You don't neglect your tactics, because if you don't get there safely, then what good are you going to be to those that are actually need your help? And that's what people are missing when we're talking about this conversation of response to active shooter, is this mindset of just go. You hear the bullets, just go. Yes, you should go, but you also need to be smart. And so now again, I don't know. We won't know what the after action report is going to say. I don't even know if I can believe they stood by. I find it hard to believe that officers stood by for an hour while people are just in there getting shot. I really find that hard to believe.
I do too, because you would have a hard time stopping officers from running in that building for that long.
That's like the mainstream storyline. So that'd be crazy if that came out as false.
That would,
that's like the belief across the board of what.
That's what people are hitting me up about, man. Like, I can't believe they waited. They were arresting parents outside, and you know, all of that stuff, man. But I'm with Ryan. Like, I find that like very hard to believe. And just think about, would you be able to stop? Say there's 10 random people, no matter what the profession is. Like, would you be able to stop 10 people from going in that building and stopping that from happening? Hearing gunshots, hearing children scream? Like, I think it would be very hard. I think it would be very hard to stop anyone from going there for that long. So, I find it hard to believe. I do find it hard to believe.
Let me dispel one last other myth really quickly. Somebody keeps spamming us.
I know. I keep trying to block them.
I know. It's Billy's people.
I know. Let me dispel one other myth real quick, because this came up in the topic. So there was an initial video that went viral that was showing the officers keeping these parents at bay, arresting people, doing all this other stuff while people are getting shot. And they're like, why aren't you going in there? Why are we waiting? You have to understand something. And again, I don't know. We still got to wait to hear out what the after action report saying and what their job duties were. But anytime there's a critical incident, you have your inner perimeter, your outer perimeter, and you have the crime scene, and then you also have the command center. There's all these there's like layers to it. And so I want people to just imagine layers to a crime scene. So let's just say the studio was a place where an active incident happened. From this studio, you start to build layers around the studio. So you'll have the crime scene, the inner perimeter, the outer perimeter, the command center, or the command post, and all this other stuff. The reason that's important is because they posted these videos right away saying, see, look at these officers are stopping parents from getting in there. They're tackling them. They're arresting them. You don't know what that officer's job duty was when he responded there. He could have easily been tasked with the guy that you're on perimeter. And as my job as a perimeter guy, I can't let anybody inside where they're trying to go. We all saw AJ's video a few years ago. AJ was on a perimeter, not to bring it up, but I am. AJ was on a perimeter. AJ's job was to prevent old boy from going inside, and he did just that. He did just that because that was his job. And so I think people get this in their mind because they don't realize what's going on. They just see officers standing around. No, they're not just standing around because they feel like standing around. They're standing around because their job is not to allow you to go in there. And the reason they can't allow you to go in there is because if you start going inside, now you are somebody else that they have to deal with. And it makes their jobs harder to deal with the threat inside because now you have all these people around you. You don't know who's who in the neighborhood. You don't know what's going on. So that's why their job is to keep people at bay. So that video that we all saw was a video of officers, it was my belief, were on a perimeter spot and they were tasked with crowd control. That is an assignment. And so wait for information to come out before you get all fired up and fueled by, you know, what you're seeing, because what you're seing isn't always equate to what's the reality.
That could have been happening while other officers were already inside.
While
or
yes,
something.
exactly.
We just don't know.
You don't.
And we have to be honest with ourselves. Like, if I was this, you know, God forbid, but if I was to show up on a scene like that, and like my son was in that school, like, I'm not sure you're gonna be able to tell me, hey, you can't find out what's going on right now, or like, hey, you just gotta stand right here and wait. Like, I'm gonna have a really hard time hearing that from you. So it's gonna be that's a bad situation to be in, especially as an officer. That's a really bad situation to be in. Telling the parent, hey, I can't tell you anything right now. We don't know what's going on, and you definitely can't go in there. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Your son, your daughter, that's gonna be difficult.
I couldn't imagine.
It's gonna be very, very difficult. And I'm probably
and that's where the dad comes in. Yep.
Yes.
Yep,
So
go ahead.
I was just saying that's a very bad situation to be in. And as a police officer, like, I get it. As a police officer, I 100% get it. Hey, I don't want you going in there, because then you could get hurt. You could add to the problem. We might have officers going in there who have, you know, 3 classrooms already cleared. You come in behind them, they turn around, and maybe they hit you thinking that you're trying to flank them, or so, you know, it's too many variables to let parents run in there after their children. So that's just one of those situations where, like,
it's a hard balancing.
It has a very, very,
like
very
Eileen said. I
hard
mean,
balancing.
like Eileen said, that's one of my oldest sons that you see in Billy's camera. But to AJ's point, is as a parent, as a dad, I don't know if I would be able to stand there on the sideline, especially as an off-duty cop. Like, if I got my gun, I'm like, hey, it is what it is. I'm going in. So I understand. So I don't want people to think that me, AJ, and Billy are heartless, and we're saying, you know, wait. Like, no, I empathize, because
absolutely.
as a parent, I would be saying the same thing. Like, no, I need to go in there. But one of the things that people are negating, and this hasn't even gotten brought up yet, is that there are still officers that experience one of the worst calls they will ever experience in their career. And so while everybody's pointing blame at them, while everybody's saying you didn't do this or you failed to do that, imagine like what that must have been like when you walk in a room and you're seeing just body carnage, not just of people, but children.
Yeah.
And so we're so quick to point blame at the officers and this and that, which, man, there's so many people that need to grieve. You have the parents or the families of the children. You have the spouses of the teachers that were killed. You have
the teachers,
the officers. Yeah, exactly.
The children that were there that didn't.
The children, the officers. The officers. You have the children that survived but saw their buddies. So there's so many people that are grieving, but yet we're so quick to point fingers and blame and this and that, as opposed to saying, you know what, this was tragic. And yeah, it was unacceptable in certain aspects, as far as that kid being able to go there and do that. But how do we take this situation and learn from it so we can try to prevent it from happening again? That should be their approach. And honestly, you know what's weird is this kind of just goes to show how much social media influences our current world.
Absolutely.
Because think about Columbine. Columbine was what everybody is saying this was. That's what Columbine was.
Yeah, Columbine was.
Just think about that for a second. What everybody is alleging and accusing these officers of Uvalde in, that's what Columbine was. Officers did sit around. Officers, you know, like they didn't go in there. Imagine if we would have had social media like we have now when Columbine happened.
Yeah.
That would have been a really, really bad ordeal. And so my point is that we don't know what happened. We obviously, you know, we have to wait for the facts to come out. But we got to just take a step back. We were able to grow from Columbine. And that was my point I was getting at, is we were able to grow from Columbine because we didn't have all the extra you know, all the extra stuff coming at you. We were able to say, look, these officers made mistakes. This is where the mistakes were made. And look at departments across the country were changed in active shooter response because we were able to focus on where the mistakes were at, as opposed to being distracted by what Sean King or what, you know, Mr. Checkpoint and all these other people had to say. We were less distracted by that and actually more focused on these were the flaws that happened, and this is how we need to encourage the improvement in the end.
I had a unique opportunity after the Vegas shooting. You remember that shooting where there was like a concert going on and he was like shooting from the casino window?
I think that's still the most casualties in an active shooter in the United States.
Yeah, I think you might be right. So, I had a unique opportunity to go to Vegas shortly after that incident and talk to some of the officers who were on scene during it, and some of the officers who like responded to help secure the scene and just do all different things. And there was something that one of the officers said to me that like just, I don't want to say it haunted me, but like it just really changed the way that I look at, one, our mental health, but two, the stories that are being told about officers who have to go to these scenes and deal with these things. And then on top of that, now you have like an additional layer of like persecution almost for doing maybe your job, maybe not, right? Like we don't know in this crazy world that we live in. But when we went there, I expected to hear the normal, because it was like a real conversation we were having. I expected to hear the normal, it was gruesome. There were bodies and, that haunts me. And, I can't get the gunfire out of my head. And, we did hear that stuff, but you want to know what the most common thing that we heard was? It was the silence and the phones ringing. The nonstop vibrating and the phones ringing. People trying to contact their loved ones who were dead, who were killed. And the scene, as Ryan said, that scene's roped off in so many different layers. So you can't even get close to probably even see that scene. I'd be willing to bet money you can't even get close enough to see that scene. So just imagine dead silence, all of these bodies, and nothing but vibrating phones and phones ringing, people trying to reach their loved ones who have passed away. And it's like, those are the stories that don't get told. And once again, I hate that I have to do that, but I get why I have to do this. I'm not saying that these stories are more important than the parents who lost loved ones. I'm not saying that these stories are more important than the surviving children or anyone else. I'm just saying that it's an important story and an important conversation to have. These officers in Vegas, they did their job. They responded to the scene, and no one really talked about what are we doing for these officers who went out here and did their job and did the unthinkable. This school shooting, we don't know what happened. We're hearing a lot of things. We're seeing videos that look bad. Say exactly what was said in that video is what happened. There was a group of people. There's a higher up saying, "Don't go, don't go, don't go." The Border Patrol our agency was finally like, we had enough. We're going in. Let's talk about them. Like, can you imagine what they had to see? Can you imagine what the officers on the perimeter had to see? Like, we have families, we have children, right? Like, I'm sure, and I heard a rumor. It could be true. It might not be true. That there were officers on scene who had children that went to that school. That's difficult. That's a difficult conversation to have. So like, you're right in saying that, Ryan. Like, we can learn so much from this situation, but it's important that we pour into the people and companies and organizations and officers and everyone else that can make this situation better and that were there during that situation. Because if you keep persecuting the officers and saying everything that we're doing is wrong, then what are you going to have? Like what are you going to have in these situations, right? Like say I hear that, say I hear this, everything that officers does is bad. We're racist. We're not trained enough. You want to defund us. You want to take away our money. This school shooting's in the back of my head now. I respond to a school shooting, God forbid. I hear gunshots going off. I decide I'm going in by myself. I want to take action. I get killed. Now this guy has more ammunition. He has a bulletproof vest he could put on now, and he has a radio where he can listen to our traffic and know exactly what's going on. And now more people are killed. Like these are the conversations that we need to have. Like if we truly care about the preservation of life, and that we truly care about our schools and our children and really any situation where there could be an active shooter. Like these are the conversations we need to have. And I truly believe that a big solution to that is more officers, higher budgets, better training.
Yep. And I want to mention what Rendy just said. Rendy said, I was an officer during the Baton Rouge ambush of officers, and even now we are still putting pieces together and helping with the aftermath of what the officers experienced and saw that day. And that was over, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago, because I went out there for that for the officers' funerals. As a matter of fact, one of the officers that was actually shot during that situation just recently passed away, I found out. But it takes years, guys. It takes years, for us. It takes years to break down what really occurred. What people don't realize, we have the luxury of sitting here on the sideline just breaking down what these officers should have did, what they didn't do. And it is not as easy as you guys think. And so we just got to be careful. It sucks. AJ, you've been involved in some critical incidents. I've been involved in critical incidents, and nobody really understands what went on other than the people that were involved in it. And that's the worst part. And to make matters even worse is we all get silenced. Like, you can't talk about the situation. It's called the gag order, which anytime there's an investigation like this, you can't speak to anybody else about the situation because it may compromise the investigation. So imagine that as the officer that's involved in a critical incident, you fired your gun, whatever it may be, you cannot talk to anybody about the situation until the investigation is over. So imagine that this investigation is 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 10 years long, and you can't talk to anybody unless it's directly about the situation and they were involved in it. Do you know how much that plays in on the officer's psyche? So I'm not saying that I want you to feel bad for the officers. I'm not saying any of that. But what I'm saying is there's so many different factors that you have to consider when you're breaking down the situation. And that's what was so infuriating. I made a video right after this happened about, wait for the facts to come out. There's so much we don't know. Do you know how much heat I took for that? Oh my goodness, I can't believe you're saying you need to wait. It's clear, you can see clear as day that these officers weren't doing this. I'm like, I can see clear. Were you at the event? No, you weren't. And so it was like you were so fired up. And it's not, I didn't even take a stance. All I did was say, let's just wait and see what happened. And I even said in the video, there could be a lot of things that these officers could have did better. These officers could have been completely in the wrong, but we don't know. Let's just wait a certain amount of time before we find out. And people were still fired up. So that's what I don't get is like people get so fired up and fueled about these situations that they can't even control. It's not like it's like they're not even gonna go and say, oh, because I'm fired up, I'm gonna change the chief of police's opinion about this, and they're gonna go ahead and speed up this investigation. They don't care about how you feel. They don't care about what you got to say. They still gonna do their investigation. So instead of you putting out all this negative energy into this situation, just wait. Pray for the families. Maybe send something nice to the families. Maybe go out there and send a nice card to the officers involved. Why don't you try to do the opposite instead of just trying to ridicule these people? Why don't you just try to put your feet in the shoes of the officers that had to respond there, or the families that had to go grieve their kids after dying? Do something positive. Put some positive energy out there as opposed to all this negative energy out there. So, I'm done. Maybe this is the Celsius starting to kick in. I ain't had one of these in a while. So.
Yeah, that's it. I've never shared this. I maybe told like 4 or 5 people this, so I'll just put it out here now. During my incident that Ryan mentioned earlier, it was like a tough time for me, right? Like there's just like a lot of like persecution and people like attacking me left and right. There's a lot going on, and I have a whole presentation, like a whole mental health presentation about it, right? But I received crazy messages, man. Like people were sending me my address, like on social media, right? Like that type of like crazy. But out of all the messages that I got, there was one, and I was like, man, I have to respond to this. And it was a kid, I would assume so, or like a young adult. And the message said, damn, I guess it's true what they say. You either die a hero or you live long enough to become a villain. And I read it and I was just like, man, that hurts. Like, like I'm already in like a dark place, and I just feel like I'm alone and I'm at rock bottom, and I'm just questioning everything, and I do so much good. Like, why am I dealing with this? Like, I know I'm doing God's work, but the devil's just working on overtime right now, and I'm not sure how I'm going to handle it. And this was the message where I'm like, wow, this is like the straw, man. Like, it was difficult because what he said made me think, like, how many people feel that way? Like, how many children or how many, police officers, inspiring police officers, just people in general, who like looked up to me and idolized me and may have saw that video and thought the exact same thing. Like, man, you either die a hero or you live long enough to become a villain. So what I did is I messaged him back and I just said, what if they're wrong? Meaning, like, what if everyone's wrong in what they're saying? Like, what if all these celebrities, what if all these news outlets are wrong? And he just replied back, I hope so. Now he has since replied to me and, said, hey, I appreciate everything you're doing. Keep up the great work. But I just want you to remember that story. Like when we talk about things like this, like what if the media is wrong? Like what if what we're saying has some validity behind it? What if the officers did exactly what they were supposed to do? What if they seen something that no person should see, experience something that no person should experience? Things are already hard. And on top of that, they have to deal with the lies and the deceit and the wrongful anger and the persecution. What if all of it's wrong and we are attacking good people who did exactly what they were supposed to do?
Yep. And you know what? All we have to do and all we can do is just wait and see. And I guarantee you, the longer we wait, the more will be revealed. And just only a few weeks, like I said, this happened a couple weeks ago, and we've already seen parents come out and say, man, no, the officers were running in there. The officers were doing this. The officers were doing that. We're going to continue to hear and see more stories like that. But like AJ said, we just got to wait and see. And guys, I really wanted to talk about this. I know it's still been a topic of discussion. Here in California, we have, and this is what really makes me upset too, is we're coming up on midterms across the country. And with the midterms, a lot of people are utilizing this to fit their political agenda. And that's what's so sad is like, oh, I'm going to use a situation like this to fit my agenda and to push whatever I need to do, my messaging. And so, we got to get beyond all that. We have to get beyond all that. We got to be able to see clearly, be able to make the change. One of the things I've already started doing is, again, trying to be the solutions out there is what ways can I go out there and help educate people about the next active shooter situation in response to it? How can I go out there and educate them with my platform, utilizing my resources and tools, so that way we can be proactive as opposed to reactive. So those are things that I've already been doing. So, and you guys, we appreciate you guys. I think this was a really, really good episode. If you guys really believe in this podcast, if you guys enjoyed this episode, do us a favor, just share it with people. And just let them know, like, look, this was a good, unbiased conversation that people need to hear, especially for those that are all fired up about the response to the Uvalde situation. Tell them that they need to listen to this. Just give them a little bit more perspective as to why officers may have did what they did or why they didn't do what they did. And then also we appreciate you, Billy, as always. Big Shot Billy is back, so it was
Big
good
Shot
having
Billy.
Back, and then AJ's arms over here. I've been noticing ever since he's been to the gym, he's been wearing smaller and smaller shirts.
He's gonna start coming in shirtless. Absolutely.
I truly think that's about to happen next.
When he hits his goal weight.
Yeah, exactly. So we appreciate all you guys.
I can't edit it out. So.
Somebody said, Officer AJ and Officer Ryder, I want to thank you guys for all you do. I've been watching your podcast for almost a year now, and almost every single time you say something that inspires me. We appreciate that. Yeah, we really appreciate that. Leslie, Eileen, all you guys, my boy Big Blue, all you guys truly mean the world to us. Do us a favor, make sure you guys hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave us a comment. We do read the comments. We definitely read the comments because we want to improve. We actually might do a part 2. I think actually what I might do is, and I haven't had a chance to do it lately just because, oh man, I didn't even get to tell y'all about my trip from hell when I was traveling to Philadelphia, but I'll say that for a different day. But anyways, it wasn't, it's just a traveling nightmare. I had like 3 canceled flights in one trip. It was ridiculous. But
you hit me up.
I digress.
That's when you hit me up.
I hit AJ up because I thought I was going to be going to Cleveland. I had a layover in Cleveland. So, and I wasn't going to make it to Philadelphia. So I was like, hey, bro, like, California's the thing. Everything is close. I'm like, hey, bro, how far are you away from Cleveland? He's like 3 hours. I was like, oh, yeah, never mind.
So you made it sound like, hey, man, just real quick, ride your bike up to Cleveland, holler at me.
Yeah. I'm coming to your house and stay tonight.
The street.
But I should have did some more research on this whole Uvalde thing. But I think the next time, what we might do, maybe we'll do a part 2 next time. We'll do a part 2, and we'll have more information, factual information to give to you guys. Also, too, I never make a lot of recommendations unless I truly believe in it. We're actually going to have this guy. I got to send you the book, AJ, and I'll give it to you, Billy, since I just finished it. Just got done reading a phenomenal book called The Change Agent by my boy Damon West. I met Damon a few weeks ago. Damon was sentenced to life in prison for doing some burglaries, and has got out and is changing the world. Like, out there speaking, public speaker. He is a keynote speaker for Dallas Cowboys, Alabama, the U, all these different universities and stuff. Phenomenal story. He's agreed to be on our podcast, so we'll have him on here pretty soon. He has some really great analogies. I would say it, but I want him to say it himself. But I think we all can relate to it. So we're gonna have him on soon. And I don't know if you guys got the message, but I think we're going to do a special edition episode of the podcast. For all of you guys that have been listening to us for a while, you guys will know what this means. We are planning on bringing my boy Artie Gons, former life in prison. He was a former lifer in prison, got out. And my boy Leon Ford, who was shot 5 times by police. We're going to bring them both on the same episode. And we're going to have a really good conversation. So that might be a special edition. I've already talked to them. So we're going to have them coming on. So we just got so much good stuff coming up, good guests coming on. So I wanted to kind of keep you guys in the loop with that. But with that being said, we love y'all. We appreciate y'all. And we'll see y'all next week. Peace. Should have gave AJ or Billy a little bit more time, because he's like, bro, you need to give me more time. Let me know. Oh, he's like, oh, go. We love y'all.
Let him have it. Savage on the set. AJ. What up, boy? Ryan Tillman. Let him have it. Savage on the set.